Hello everyone, it's Scott and welcome to another video. And before I get into my review, I want to wish everyone who's subbed and not subbed and everyone else a Merry Christmas. I do hope that y'all truly enjoyed the time with your loved ones, whether it was family, friends, your partners, basically your loved ones that are near and dear to your heart and people you can trust, people who spread joy to your life, people who you can, whether or not you got gifts or you gave, the gifts of joy to people. It's always a great feeling to have, whether you cheered someone up or you made someone feel like they were an important part of your life. I do wish from the bottom of my heart that everyone had a genuinely awesome Christmas day, and that hopefully no one had a terrible and awful day, and everyone, if anyone can see some positives on this holiday, it's always a great feeling to have. So hopefully all people who are subbed and everywhere else, once again, I truly hope that you had a wonderful Christmas. But anyways, getting into the subject of my review, the movie I'm going to be talking about is of a childhood film that I kind of liked and grew up on. Probably not my number one favorite movie, but it's definitely something I really hold near and dear to my heart as well, and that's of the 1989-1990 post-apocalyptic science fiction film, Robot Jox. Two Man, Two Machines, Two Wild. This here is the Scream Factory Blu-ray. It's got a great amount of features. You got two all-new audio commentaries, new and archival interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, and more. Probably like trailer and TV spot and photo galleries, behind-the-scenes photos and stuff like that. Whatever. And since, like I said, it's a Scream Factory Blu-ray, you have the reversible art here. That's what I have it set on. Over here is the original theatrical art, which is okay, but I feel like it makes it feel a little low budget. And this one here is the actual robots from the film. I definitely like that better because I saw a poster of this when I was renting this at the video place. I think that's what it was called. They had a poster, and of course I was able to rent the VHS. This is the one that stood out to me the most. The fiery background, the cool looking robots. Yeah, that was some cool looking shit back in the day. So yeah. And the film itself is directed by, let me see if I can straighten this out, if it'll let me. The film's directed by Stuart Gordon. He also wrote the story. Before he did this film, he did films like Reanimator, From Beyond, Dolls, this film, Fortress. He did a lot of low-budget horror films on a very low and shoestring budget, and I have to have respect for that because he was able to craft some really unique films back in the day with Empire Pictures, who actually was a production company for this film, but they eventually went belly up because I think they put in a whole lot of money for this. This is like their highest rated budget for a film, because they probably spent maybe $1 million or $2 million at most for their films. And apparently, not too long after they went bankrupt, but I think there were some other issues that also contributed to their demise. So they had a hard time finding a distributor. I mean, the film actually finished sometime in '87, but didn't get a release for almost 3 years, and didn't do that great. But it definitely found its audience, on video, and it definitely had a cult following, and definitely, it found me, and that's why I have it on VHS, DVD, on Blu-ray, and I'm glad it got the features it deserved, because it was. I like how the practical effects work. I like the characters that are in there. I like several of them. It goes at a I wouldn't say a fast pace, but it's a really short film. It's only like an hour and 24 minutes and change, and it's got some nice visuals, and I do like how it involves the Cold War. There's basically the plot revolves around it's sometime after the nuclear war, and basically traditional war has been outlawed, and it's basically you have these two nations. You have the market, which is like I think it's called the market, the Western influenced market, and then you have the Russian style influenced the Confederation. That's where the Cold War elements came in. That's what Stuart Gordon threw in there, and basically there's territorial disputes, and there's settled on single combat, and they're in these giant mecha robots, and they're operated by these pilots called the Robot Jox, hence the film's title. We have two of our main characters. We have Achilles, which is Gary Granham's character. He's won a good amount of fights. He's won 9. Basically, each robot jock is contracted to do 10 fights. And he's basically facing competition with the best one, the Confederation, which is Alexander Paul Koslo's character. And we see that Alexander has killed the last opponent. He's killed the previous 8. So we basically have a bit of a war between them. It's the best against the best. And we see that later on when they start to fight, Achilles gets an upper hand at one point, and then Alexander starts to get the upper hand at one point, and Alexander attempts to launch a rocket, part of a rocket arm against him, but the projectile goes out of control and it heads towards the bleachers where a lot of spectators are watching, and Achilles heroically tries to intercept it to prevent them from prevent the spectators from dying, but he goes in there to block it, but unfortunately he ends up causing more damage because he absorbed a good impact of it, and he's knocked into the crowd, killing over 300 people. Eventually, the referees declare the match pretty much a draw, and they order a rematch, but apparently Achilles is shaken about what happened. He decides he's going to retire and decides to go live with his brother and his family. He's being branded a coward and all that other stuff. And while this is going on, this is an opportunity for these genetically enhanced humanoids, which are referred to as 2Bs in sort of a racial term. Eventually, a new jock is being chosen to face Alexander, which is Anne-Marie's Johnson character Athena. And apparently, Achilles had some interactions with her where they were friendly, maybe competitive, but they were good intentional emotions, maybe even romantic in a way, attracted to her. He decides he's actually going to return to fight Alexander, which infuriates Athena. And during all this time, when the robot's being reconfigured, the man who is pretty much the robot design, Doc Matsumoto, which is Danny Kimakona's character, or Danny Kamakona, I guess that's how you pronounce the name. He refuses to divulge any kind of information about the weapons, and because apparently anytime there was always some leaked information about the secret weapons, because apparently the Confederation would have the similar weapon as well, pretty much the same, and he decides he's not going to have any more leaks. And one of Achilles' confidant, which is the strategist, Tex Conway, suspects that he's a spy. And eventually Conway actually confronts Matsumoto, but the twist is that Matsumoto reveals he's analyzed Conway's final fight, because apparently Conway was actually the first guy to win all 10 fights and he was considered a hero for the day. But apparently he divulges that one of the shots that Tex Conway shot at was actually deliberately intentional, and eventually Matsumoto actually finds out that Tex Conway is actually the Confederation agent, and then eventually Conway confesses that that's the case. And then while there's a struggle for the gun, Conway wins, attempts to shoot him, but luckily Matsumoto actually secretly records the conversation, and eventually Conway kills him without even knowing he's being recorded. On the day of the fight that's going to happen between Achilles and Alexander, Athena drugs Achilles and attempts to steal his jock suit to commandeer the robot, and eventually she's able to get on the field. And while she's weaponing the new weapons briefing, there's the videotape that Matsumoto recorded, and Conway eventually commits suicide by jumping down to his death, pretty much. And Alexander and Athena battle it out. Athena has some moments where she actually looks like she's going to win, but because of the new upgrades that Alexander had, like this time he has 4 legs instead of the normal 2 that he had previously. There's a new repeating weapon where this mechanism just pins her down, and instead of flying out, it's like the mechanism just shoots back and forth into her pretty much, and it incapacitates the robot. So eventually, it looks like the fight's going to be in favor of Alexander, but then Achilles decides to go in his shuttle and attempt to swap places with Athena. When Alexander defies the referees by stomping on their little space floater, which you see, both Alexander and Achilles fight it out. you have a space battle, and then when Achilles' ship is incapacitated again, he tries to thwart Alexander, but to no avail. Eventually, he's able to outthink his opponent, and then they eventually have like a physical confrontation, and then they end up settling. Basically, Achilles attempts to actually convince Alexander that they can both live despite their differences. In the end, they're able to salute each other, and they do a fist bump. So you can say this film was like the first introduction to the fist bump. So yeah. But what I like about this film is that it's probably mainly the robots that you see. The fact that they are very well crafted, very well designed, and this was really the first film before Pacific Rim to do this. And I think the visuals are, despite the fact that I see the wire rods holding them, the string, they look very well designed. I mean, the stop motion animation looks pretty stout for the time. Considering the budget was somewhere around $7 million, I think they did the best of what they had, and I think I don't mind the acting of Gary Grantham as Achilles. He does a good job with what he has to work with. Athena, she does okay, and my main problem I think with this movie is that I feel like there's not really much of a. I feel like there's not a whole lot of. I feel like the characters weren't really fully developed. Was my main problem. I think they should have developed them further. That's why the film is really short. I think that's one of my main problems. I think it should have been at least more than an hour and 25 minutes or so. It should have been longer. That way they can develop the characters a little better. And wish they could have focused on more on Achilles and Athena's relationship. I know that the actors themselves, Grantham and Johnson, didn't really get along because of their political beliefs, but they did their best to maintain a good working relationship, which I guess you can say showed, but I just wish that the script and story could, further their development. And I wish we could have seen, and Alexander, Paul Koslo does fine as the villain. I just wish we could have, some development with him, some more scenes with Alexander. I felt like he wasn't in there as much as he should have been. But for the moment of screen time that he had, Paul Koslo does a fun job playing the stereotypical kind of Russian villain. Do not fight tubies. I could squash you both like bugs. But Paul Koslo makes the villain as Alexander, worth it. He definitely, his screen presence is very fun to watch. And the other characters, they're there. They do the jobs well. Like Robert Sampson is the commissioner, making sure that Achilles is sound and make sure that his sanity is good. And apparently he has like another kind of fun assistant in Tex Conway, which is Michael Adderach's character. He does an okay job. He was, from what I remember him most, he was in the first Iron Eagle movie. He's okay in here. I like how he turns out. He looks like he's going to be this fun type of, Texan type of guy, which is what he is. But it turns out there's another layer beneath him. It's interesting how it's revealed that he's the spy and he's been feeding the Confederation, information about the secret weapons and all that good stuff. So I thought that was a kind of interesting twist. And Danny Kamakona, the guy that plays Doc Matsumoto, he does a fine job for his role as, the very subtle and very intelligent Doc Matsumoto. I like how he craftily records the conversation in case he ends up dying, being killed by Tex, which is what happens. I like how he would just record the conversation, and despite his death, he gets the word out about who Tex really is. So yeah, and his acting's okay. He actually would play a villain in the sequel in name only called Robot Wars. He plays the villain in that film. And like I said before, Albert Band produced that film along with Charles Band, his son, I believe. But yeah, I think, like I said before, the main problems I have with this film was lack of development with the characters. I wish they could have, developed them better, had more, developed the relationship better, had a little more screen time for the villain. But at the end of the day, I had fun with this flick. It goes by at a good pace, and maybe if it was due for a remake, we probably would get, a better script and far more developed characters. And I think, Gordon's really confident in his direction. I like how it was a step away from what he usually does, because he did a lot of horror stuff before this, and he was trying to, I guess, make a film that that had the idea of what a children kind of. Excuse me. How should I put this? I think it was something about, Gordon would later admit this was like, was trying to write, the author was trying to write, a movie for adults that children can enjoy. And Gordon had pretty much, he was trying to direct a movie for children that adults can enjoy. So it's that type of scenario. But anyway, you slice it. I was young enough to like this film, and I still like this film for the entertainment it delivered. I kind of understand the Cold War aspects, because it was still in the 80s, and we were still kind of using those, I guess, those cliches. And sometimes, depending on how well they're executed, they can be fine for what they're given. They can be fine for the film. It depends on if they serve a purpose and whatnot. Whether we can, despite all that, if we're peaceful and if we can, we can both live in unified peace and sort of like that, then yeah, depending on what the purpose was, I think the story has its own element. Just wish, like I said, the characters could have been developed better. I think that's what Haldeman was probably disappointed with. And anyway you sliced it, I think this film is definitely, enjoyable for adults. I think this film can be entertaining. I think it's it may have some cheesy one-liners, but hey, that's what makes it a fun film. It's a film that at the end of the day you really shouldn't take seriously, but at the same time, you should definitely kind of turn your brain off in certain moments. There's definitely some cheesy one-liners. It may look like there's some bad acting, but hey, that's just the fun of a good old-fashioned popcorn flick. So yeah. But anyway, like I said, I do enjoy Robot Jox. It's definitely worth seeing if you're into the mega fights. For the fight scenes that are there, the robot scenes, they're decent. And I like there's actually even a brief space battle, and you hear nothing in space. There's no sound in space other than the music that's playing. And speaking of the music, the best highlight I would say is Frederick Talgorn. He does a really great job with with the themes that he uses, like the dun 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 thing, the battle scene and some of the dramatic moments, and just basically the overall battle scenes, the music. It's spot on. Considering the budget of this film, I think Frederick Talgorn really did a solid job as a composer. And of course, Gordon used him again for his later film, Fortress, which was another good score in its own right. So definitely the visual effects, the acting's decent, the score's great, just needed a little more development on its characters, and the running time should have been further expanded to kind of explore the development of the relationships of the characters and the motivations of certain characters, and kind of expand on, certain past, like Conway and Achilles, and maybe on his family. I feel like at times the editing was maybe a little disjointed now that I look back on it, but overall, it's a fun flick. I would definitely recommend it, and you should definitely check it out. If it's available to rent on YouTube, go for it. Okay, that's going to do it for me. Once again, I wish you all a Merry Christmas, and hopefully you like this review of this film. Hopefully you like what I do, and I'll do my best to continue grinding out some content, but I might make an announcement at a later date. But anyway you slice it, hopefully you'll like this review. Give it a thumbs up, and yeah. Alrighty, I'll see you later, folks. Bye-bye.